Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with the story, If You Gamble Against a Man with a Hat for a Face, Know What Your Wager Is, penned by the twisted mind of the Black Cyclone Order. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow fear fanatics, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us. So feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together as we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story, If You Gamble Against a Man with a Hat for a Face, Know What Your Wager Is. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. All I ever wanted was for my wife and I to live comfortably. But the longer we stayed together, the higher our bills increased. We'd already fought off debts from college, barely scraping by. Even after we paid them off, we were only able to afford a tiny apartment on the outskirts of New York City. Sidewalks laid cracked everywhere, while condemned buildings sat sadly against their crooked foundations. Crooked lampposts would hang only by electrical wires. Graffiti marked every street corner in bland art that existed without rhyme or reason. Homeless people could be found on every street corner, a constant reminder of what would happen if my wife and I failed to keep up with our payments. However, I managed to make somewhat decent money as a plumber. But even then, it sometimes wasn't enough to deal with loan sharks, the hefty utility bills, food prices, and gas money. I was willing to do anything to get us out. And that is where I encountered gambling. I was willing to take the risks. I'd take any chance to obtain a reward, even just a small one. It started out with just a handful of poker games. Then I moved on to scratch tickets and slot machines. All I needed was enough to get by. Unfortunately, obtaining a payday from the casinos was impossible. I started growing desperate, which only led to more debt. The whole cycle sucked me down like Odysseus' ship in Charybdis Maw. And just like that, the relationship with my wife began to fall apart. My wife and I were once so close to each other. Before we married, there would be days where we'd work together at wood shops, creating 3D prints of various sci-fi characters and video games. Other times, we'd study the components of circuits and use them to create elaborate lighting displays whenever Christmas arrived. Our wedding day was supposed to be the greatest day of our lives. Instead of relying on the help of others like we did back in college, we relied on ourselves. But my actions tore all that apart. I didn't know what else to do either. A few nights ago, I arrived at my shitty apartment, having completed a 10-hour shift fixing the drains of several upper-class folks. I rested my hand on the knob, expecting the worst from my wife. Sighing, I pushed the door open. The moment I did, she was already in the front hall. Her eyes were scrunched, and she was holding a bank statement, smacking it for emphasis.
Care to explain this?
I rubbed my temples, removing my scum-covered overalls and plopping them right into the nearest laundry hamper. We locked eyes. Breaking eye contact with her would only ignite her anger further. She was holding another piece of evidence of my failures, my failure to strike it rich. All I could do was stand there sheepishly, tail tucked behind me, and wait to get ripped a new one. No words could come out of my mouth. She marched up to me, holding it in my face.
Frank, you wasted $3,000 at the casino again?
I set my toolbox down and washed the pipe gunk from my hands, looking down just for a bit.
Damn it, Frank. Look at me when I'm talking to you.
Resting a hand on my eyes, I glanced over at her petite frame. Then I began to speak. We can live comfortably if you just give...
Enough of the excuses. We nearly lost our apartment twice by you betting on slots. You wasted our heating money on roulette. And now this? The landlord wants $4,000 in 2 weeks. And if we don't get this sorted out, we lose our apartment.
I held up my hands reassuringly. Look, just let me figure this out. I'll think of some way to get the money.
You'd better. Otherwise, we're getting a divorce. Got it?
Without another word, I put on a casual outfit, exiting for some fresh air. Shutting the door behind me, I gazed back at the unpolished apartment number on the frame. Wincing, I clenched a fist and descended the rickety stairs. Eventually, my boots hit the cracked pavement and I headed off. I stood outside a graffiti-covered subway station, pacing around, hands in my pockets. My fists constricted as I pounded a nearby wall. There's no way I would have been able to make that kind of money. Craps were too unpredictable. Arcade machines were always rigged, and roulette was too high in stakes. Seeing red, I screamed and kicked a wall as hard as I could. My foot throbbed, and once I was done with my fit, I broke down sobbing. The sidewalk darkened with my tears. I pressed my head against it, clawing at it until my fingernails turned crimson. Then, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Wiping the tears away, I glanced over my shoulder. A card was lying on the floor. Its borders were covered in green dollar symbols. The rest of the card was a silver color, shiny enough to reflect my face in it. Written in gold letters were the following: Aces High Casino. Win 1 round of blackjack and earn $50 million. No monetary wager needed. Table 777. My eyes lit up. All I had to do was win 1 game of blackjack, and I'd be rich. Dimples formed on my cheeks, and I pumped my fist. I nearly clicked my heels in joy, but decided against it. I'd already caused enough of a scene already, and I wanted to make sure nobody knew my secret. When I flipped it around, it had an address also written in golden letters. Despite the address being in an unknown area, I still managed to pull it up on my phone's map and arrived without any struggle. The casino itself was a pigsty, to say the least. Smokers polluted the air in the prison gray interior. Slot machines with broken lights clicked and whirred while cheap dice clattered against tables with peeling felt. Meanwhile, the concrete floor was covered in colonies of roaches, while neglected beer bottles sat against the rungs of several tables. The only thing that was kept well was the bar, and a room draped with navy blue curtains with golden sashes. Emblazoned above the doorway was the number 777. This was the first time I had entered a casino smiling. For once, I thought that this was my lucky night. When I pushed the curtains away, they revealed a room with ornate black wallpaper, an assortment of oak desks and other furniture. The walls were covered in fine Baroque paintings. On the floor was a single blue carpet covered in opulent tapestry. I followed the back wall to a single dealer table coated in green felt. 2 seats were present with one patron taking the seat on the left. He was shaking with what I assumed was excitement. Behind him was the dealer, a trim man with long blonde hair and a top hat over his nose and eyes. He wore a dapper tuxedo free of blemishes that shimmered in the light of a single hanging glass lamp. His skin was pure and free of moles, glistening with slight amounts of glitter.
"Why, hello there."
The man spoke in a voice slicker than the gel in his hair.
"Are you here to win big?"
Unlike the loan sharks, his teeth were cleaner than a freshly washed plate. "Yes, I am. Deal me in," I said, straightening my back, shuffling into the last seat. The other player had his jaw locked together. His eyes were drooping and bloodshot. Sweat pooled around his brow like glass beads. Just like him, I always felt nervous about losing, so their reaction was understandable.
"You know the rules of blackjack? I deal out cards. You can say hit me if you want more cards. Get closest to 21 without going over. Dealer only draws 2 cards, and you can also surrender your cards for half your bet. When you don't want any more cards, say the word stand."
Shuffling the cards through his hands and manipulating them like a sculptor with a ceramic pot. I double blinked. Wager? What do I bet with?
"Play a game and I will tell you."
The mysterious man focused on passing out his cards. First, he brought out 2 cards for himself and dealt 2 more to each player. Instantly, he flipped over his cards. A jack and a king. 20. I clutched the velvet-backed cards, seeing what I was dealt. A 10 and a 7 of hearts. I forced my face into a neutral smile. My stomach twisted. There was no way I could get 21 that easily. "Surrender," I said, pushing my cards to the dealer. All he did was reshuffle the cards and toss me 2 more. They didn't even bother looking back up at me during the process. The other player started clutching his stomach. My smile vanished. I carefully looked over the left guy's cards. A 7 and a 2 of clubs.
"Hit me!"
The guy on the left choked out. An ace of spades. A total of 10. Sweat trickled down his head like a shower in April. His eyes welled up with tears while foam developed around his mouth. I raised a brow, wondering what his deal was. I knew the stakes of gambling, but my sixth sense kept telling me something was just not right. No, that couldn't be true. Even if there was some kind of string attached or fine print I didn't read, I couldn't risk giving up that money. Besides, this might have been my only chance to obtain such a vast award without much risk.
"Hit me!"
The man wheezed. A 5 of hearts. His teeth chattered. While I waited for my turn, I stood up and walked around the room, getting a closer look at all the ornate gadgets and such. My eyes focused on a painting on the leftmost wall. It resembled a man in rich military regalia, but something made my hair stand on end. Their upturned white mustache looked damp, and their face sagged like they were crying. Linear, stick-like shadows were cast on the sleeves. Edging forward, they came into focus. Hands. I followed their forms outward, which extended into oily, dripping arms.
Hush.
A faint noise echoed from somewhere in the room. "What?" I mouthed, turning an ear to the source.
Hush.
It came from the painting. I backed away, hands out at my sides. Was someone dragged in that painting?
Where are you going? You forgot to pay up.
The dealer yelled back, hands slamming on the table and pulling out a sack of navy blue poker chips. I did a double take. I thought the card said there was no monetary wager needed.
There isn't.
Then I looked at the ground. There was a second rug there. The tapestry matched, but its patterns didn't match with the other rug. It was off-center from the rest of the decorations, like someone didn't even bother setting it up properly. Taking a closer look, I could hear faint whispers coming from it too. When I looked back up, the guy on the left was gone. I rushed over, checking his cards. A total of 25. Swallowing saliva, I stood in confusion, wondering what to do next. I scraped my fingernails against my palms. I needed that money. If I didn't get it, I'd lose my wife and my apartment. And what about the loan sharks? Only God knew what would happen to me if I didn't pay up. What was I going to do? What would happen if I lost? Would I turn into another object just like the other guy? Or would I be in for a worse fate?
That's because there isn't a monetary wager. I'm still taking half of what you owe. In my game, your payment is in pain.
A sharp stab punched my left side. My left side felt heavier than before, like my veins were replaced with tungsten. I grabbed my fingers around my chest. The area around the pain almost felt solid, like a tumor. Brushing around the area, I could make out a cylindrical mass. I tried to inspect it some more, but the pain overwhelmed me and I crumpled to the ground. I crouched down on all fours, trying to get back to my seat, but the pain froze me in place. Reaching out a hand, I called out for help. Nothing. Slithering away, I pulled back the curtains to the entrance of the casino. I spat on the ground from the bludgeoning pain.
Don't feel out of luck. You can still surrender once more and you still have 2 chances left.
The dealer smiled, adjusting his hat. It was only a glimpse, but I caught a look at his upper face. His eyes were on his hat, and his forehead was blank. The dealer looked like they were plucked straight out of an Alice in Wonderland book. What or who was this dealer?
Think long and hard about this. I saw you arguing with your wife.
I clambered back to my seat. I still didn't know what that dealer did to me. Something in me forced me to get back up and keep playing. More questions ate at me the longer I played. How did he know that information? Then I remembered feeling a tap back at Grand Central Station, and the card that brought me here. He couldn't have been human. Was he some kind of demon? I didn't bother asking. There wasn't any way he would spill the beans about his nature. After what seemed like hours, I managed to writhe back into my seat, slumping over the table like I just had the worst hangover.
Ready to try again?
The charming man said, resting his chin on his interlocked hands. Reluctantly, I gave him a thumbs up. He took back the cards and began manipulating the split deck once more. I analyzed every move he made. None of the cards were tricked. He wasn't second dealing and didn't have any aces up his sleeve. Never revealed anything under the table either. The only thing that brought me reassurance was that he was honest. Still, keeping an eye out was critical. The dealer revealed his cards. 2 tens again. 1 of spades, 1 of hearts. His face was harder than diamond and glowed like one too. Not a pleasing glow, but one that would hex anyone that dared gaze at it for too long. I looked at my cards. An ace and a 7. 18. Gripping my lower abdomen, I stayed crumpled in agony. The odds of getting a blackjack were slim, and the stabbing pain skewed my thoughts. Surrender, I wheezed. The word slipped out of my mouth like the dying breath of a wounded soldier. The dealer smiled, holding a pile of blue poker chips around him. He waved his hand over the mound and made an inaudible chant. Then they vanished. I held my hands over my face, bracing myself. Suddenly, the pain doubled, shifting to my right like a mudslide down a hill. Now I knew everything the previous player was going through. I vomited out something hard and blue, a poker chip. Suddenly, my guts turned and another 7 spilled out. My esophagus wound itself into knots more contorted than cobwebs. I forfeit. The man started to smile.
Without these?
With a thud, the hat-faced dealer pulled out a jar filled with a kidney and a piece of liver. They still were oozing with blood that plumed and fit their containers. I remembered how the dealer said that there was no monetary wager. He never said there wasn't a wager at all. I paid in pain, and my wager was my organs.
You want them back? Win them.
He set them back on the ground. Now there was no choice. My fate was sealed if I tried to leave. I started to shed tears. If I didn't get these organs back and fast, I was done for. Even if someone saw me passed out on the floor, finding donors for organs wasn't guaranteed. And even then, I'd be put further in debt. Nothing would be solved. Then again, was trying to beat this guy even worth it? No. The reward was too great. Taking a few deep breaths, I sat back down. Reluctantly, I asked that he proceed. The dealer drew out cards just like before. He took the cards and gave them a good shuffle. Plucking 2 cards out of the stack, he revealed them. A king and a 9. Another poker chip tumbled out my throat. I spat it out in a red and blue plastic heap. Not paying attention to the mess I made, he handed me 2 cards. A jack and a 2. 12. Hit me. An ace. Aces could count as 1 or 11 depending on what other cards were drawn. I still had a fighting chance. Hit me. A 5. His dead stare tore at my soul. I scratched against the felt, the wounds in my fingers reopening. From the corner of my eyes, I could see him frowning.
Are you going to play? Or do you want all that money to go to waste?
I gritted my teeth. Shut up. Hit me. Swallowing saliva, I watched the dealer play out my last card. A queen.
You lose.
The dealer said coldly, grabbing a pile of poker chips and holding them close. He waved his hand over the mound and made another incantation. Then they vanished once more. Everywhere at once, burning pain sears my skin, making me black out. When I wake up and feel my arms, they're covered in something hard, blue, and plastic. My clothes were gone. I examined my extremities and my torso. My skin was missing and replaced with poker chips. They were shaped to fit every part of my body. Cracks filled with blood gushed out with each slight movement I made. Horrified, I spilled my guts. More poker chips slid out my throat. Piles of skin laid clumped on the side of the table in hideous pink and blood-red sheets.
I think you know what's at stake now. 1 try left. Better make it count. You want to end up in an object for an eternity?
He taunted. The rigidity of my plastic-coated skin made each movement expose more of the cracks, searing my muscles. I groaned as I raised myself up. Crimson liquid dampened the table. I pounded at the table. This was it. I either walked out with my money and saved my marriage and tied up all those knots, or I lost and suffered a fate worse than death. Giving up was not an option. I gave the mysterious man a death glare, not even bothered by his resistance. He plucks out 2 cards, a 9 and a 10. This was my chance. Then my cards were revealed, a 10 and a 2. Fingers rattling, I took a deep breath and let calmness seep into me. Hit me, I sputtered. Another 2. Huffing, I opened my mouth to speak again. The dealer just stared into me, tilting his head like a vulture waiting for roadkill. The poker chips rattled again, grinding against each other. Hit. I paused for a moment, recollecting my thoughts. At a value of 14, I needed at least a 6 to beat the dealer, but an 8 or higher would result in disaster. Gulping down another chaser of saliva, I spoke. Hit me. To my chagrin, a 5 slipped out of the hand. I was now tied, staring at the pile of skin and my other organs. I closed my eyes and shook in horror. An ace or a 2 were the only cards I could draw in order to win. I looked down at my cards, sweat dripping on the table. With a quick glance, I gazed at the eyes on the man's silk hat.
Don't keep me waiting.
I'd begun hyperventilating. His stare grew more intense the longer I waited. His confident smile turned to a frown of irritation. Eyebrows and mouth were twisted into a hideous snarl. He rattled his fingers against the dealing table. The cacophony made my ears go numb. Then I whispered my answer. Hit me. The man darted up, smiling back in anticipation.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
I closed my eyes, expecting the worst. Hit me. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Then the last card was revealed. A 2. I'd won. My mouth dropped. The sheets of skin unfurled themselves and flattened over me. 2 organ jars spilled over, their contents rising in a beam of white and torpedoing back into my body. Immediately, I yelped at the top of my lungs, skipping my heels and doing a jig. I regained my strength, instantly looking around for traces of my prize. For several minutes, I wasn't able to uncover anything. Staring directly at the dealer's face, I asked him to reveal my prize.
I don't have it with me.
Not listening, I scrutinized every inch of the room, looking behind his station, checking under the table, everything. I searched everywhere for my prize, my happiness dissipating. With each step I took, my smile faded even further, twisting into a frown. My nose crinkled. Where is the 50 million? I demanded, overturning the table, ripping off the ornate paintings and yanking the tasseled rugs off the floor. You promised me $50 million if I beat you. Do you realize what's going to happen to me if I don't get that money? The strange man just stood there, not even acknowledging my pleas. You promised me money. You're a thief, I roared, pointing an accusing finger at him. I only did this for my wife, to save my marriage. I almost gave up my life trying to help my family out. How can you take that away from me? The demon stuck his hands behind his back and shook his head. He rolled his eyes back in thought. Something was up with him.
You aren't like the other gamblers.
Other gamblers? I said, stepping back.
They all wanted the money for worthless things. A mansion with fountains and a view. Hookers. A trip to Tahiti.
He paced around me. His face was rather relaxed and calm. Never once did he lose eye contact with me.
But you had so much determination to help your wife out that you would risk it all. I admire that. It took me a while to figure out that you were actually a kind-hearted person.
I saw red and tried to punch him. He grabbed my fist, shoving it back.
Listen to me. I understand your rage. There never was a prize in the first place. It was nothing but a lure to capture those that wasted their lives away. But there is one thing that you don't understand.
I thrusted my hands back. You nearly killed me, all for nothing.
Yes, but that was before I saw you the way you really were. Listen to my words.
Slowly, I relaxed my posture, but still remained firm. Why should I listen to you?
I can help you out of your situation.
My nostrils flared. Give me my money, you goddamn thief.
You never needed the money in the first place.
Taken aback, I retreated. What do you mean? My arms relaxed once more.
You're a plumber, aren't you? I saw you come home from work, just barely catching a glimpse of your schedule. 40 hours a week for $38 an hour for 5 days a week. That's $3,648 a week for 2 weeks. You already have everything you need.
But you don't understand. They need $4,000, I pleaded. He wouldn't budge.
Trying to earn this money by taking dumb risks and chances will not get you anywhere. Look at all the things that you've done wrong.
Tears began to well up, and I want to change that. I wiped my eyes. But what am I supposed to do now?
The only way you can earn that money is through grit and spit,
He said, walking around me.
You aren't going to find solace through good luck alone, and you already have the tools that some people don't have. If you give up now, you might as well have lost. Think about it.
With those last words, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers, disappearing without a trace. Slowly, I gathered my things and walked out of the casino, head hanging low. The following day, I sat outside an old woman's faucet, inspecting how to fix a leak. I wondered what the demon's words meant to me. Before I stuck the wrench up to a U-trap, I remembered my pay. If I worked the same amount of hours as before, I'd only make $3,648. But if I pulled off some overtime and worked several extra hours, I might just be able to pay off my debts. I started staying up much later than before. Not long after, my wife started to become suspicious. Eventually, she confronted me.
Frank, you've been staying up late. Are you going back to the casinos again?
I closed my eyes. Instead of fear, calmness filled my veins, and my blood stilled. Not this time. I've been working overtime. Her face loosened up for just a moment before hardening back up. I held my hands up and motioned my palms downward. Listen, I have been horrible lately. All my gambling did was drown us in deeper debt. Her expression began to soften up again, her frown vanishing. I want to change things. We used to work so well together, doing everything to help each other. Instead of fighting against each other, it's time we made peace, and we bring us out of our debt together. I held out my hand for her to shake it. She kept her arm pulled back and folded like the pincer of a mantis. Inch by inch, she extended it and took it. The following day, my wife convinced me to go to therapy to get out of my addiction, which I gladly obliged. Simultaneously, she decided to start up another job working as an electrician. Day by day passed and we pooled all our resources as one. Before our eyes, bills were paid and debt disappeared faster than eye floaters. Our financial status wasn't the only thing that changed. Her once crusty mood lightened up and she began to smile more. She began to believe my words and began to respect the changes I made. And then we paid off our rent. We got a letter from our landlord saying that we now were even. The moment that letter came in, we embraced each other. The only question now was, what were we going to do with this extra money? Not too long ago, we ended up earning enough money to create another 3D project, this time of a companion cube. Day after day, we created more projects. Although we weren't as happy as our days back in college, we still could make the best with what we had. In retrospect, the hat-faced man put up a good fight, but I managed to come out of a casino with more than I came in with. It wasn't exactly money, but it wasn't worthless either. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale. If you gamble against a man with a hat for a face, know what your wager is. By the talented The Black Cyclone Order. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fear File Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fear File Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.